All right. Well, as Tyson mentioned, this psalm is really a great one. This passage is a great one for us at this time. As a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago when I started to prepare for this, and that's one of the great things about using the lectionaries, I can prepare weeks in advance for a message. I saw that one of the Old Testament readings was the golden calf, and I thought, ooh, false gods. You know, everything that's going on in our country right now, we make false gods out of all kinds of things, especially politics. This would be a great thing to talk about. And then just personally, because I am worn down in some ways. I was looking at that again this week. I thought, you know what I need the 23rd Psalm. And so I'm bringing that to you this week because I need it. And I hope that is a benefit to this group as well. I want to tell you about Jody this morning. Jody is a friend of mine who I met in college because he was a professor of mine. We eventually, because I stuck around for so long, I was one of those guys who just stuck around for a degree and another degree, and worked with him significantly because he was a composer and I would sing some of his songs. As a matter of fact, this is cute. When you sing a song that a professor of yours has written and no one has ever sung it before, in the program notes, you always write world premiere. And that just seems very grandiose. But the fact is, I got to do the world premiere of some Jody Nagel compositions. He's an atheist, if I didn't mention that already, which really is the point of me bringing him up. And he's kind of one of the mean ones in a way. It's interesting that we're friends. We had a lot in common, but he's the kind of guy who would post a meme that says, religion, it's like history class without the facts. Yeah, he can be mean, or he'll say, hey, you go ahead and pray for me, I'll think for you. That's Jody. So you just got to accept him for who he is if you're friends with him. I have other friends who are atheists, but they're atheists in different ways. These are friends who go to church, sometimes a lot, sometimes a little. These are friends who recite creeds, friends who would say they believe that the Bible is the inspired, inerrant, infallible word of God and our rule for all matters of faith and practice. These are friends who might post Christian-y things on their Facebook pages. But when it comes to the point where faith meets life, forgiveness, generosity when it comes to money, prayer, evangelism, compassion, for all practical purposes, you could call them atheists because there is no substantive difference between them and Jody. They're not any more forgiving than he is. They use their money no more generously than Jody does. They pray roughly the same amount as Jody does. And sometimes they're not even as compassionate as Jody is. In significant ways, they can relate to the sharp criticism of the Apostle Paul, who in Titus chapter 1, he said, they claim to know God, but by their actions they deny him. They are detestable, disobedient, and unfit for doing anything good. And here's my confession for the week, is I'm one of them. There are pockets of my life, there are areas of my faith, there are moments or even months when there's a disconnect between my faith and my life. And I am, in those moments, a Christian atheist. One example of that in my life is I believe in God, but I worry. I'm worried about COVID affecting the people I love, especially people in high-risk groups. I'm worried about our increasingly divided country and leaders who do not seem to have plans to unite us. I'm playing out worst-case scenarios in my head, and this is especially concerning to me because I'm not a worrier. I mean, some of you guys are just natural worriers. You wake up thinking, what's going to go wrong today? It's not me. I mean, I'm the kind of guy who says, it'll be all right. That's normally my personality. It'll be fine. And still, I find ways to worry. I remember 9 years ago, I got a call from my son's school because Miles he's in middle school, he was in gym class, and he sat down to lift some weights like they were supposed to in gym class, and he couldn't stand back up. He'd lost the ability to use his legs, not because of something that was going on in gym class, but really there was it was a mystery. Like, why can't Miles, and it got worse to the point where he couldn't walk anymore. So this, of course, we went to, took him to the hospital, and then they quickly, they said, he's an 11-year-old. We got to send him to Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. We were so glad for the care, the specialized care that he was able to receive there. But there was really, they ran all these tests, and they were coming up with nothing. He just couldn't use his legs. He had no strength in his legs. And I worried so much, and especially those first 2 weeks. And a lot of you can relate to this. And some of you are cutting me some slack right now when it comes to worry, because you think, hey, Matt, of course you're worried. My goodness, this is your son and he can't walk. That's pretty serious. These are people you care about, who you're worried about getting COVID, and you love this country, and you're worried about the division of this country. Of course you're worried, you care. And thank you for cutting me some slack on that. But the fact is, yeah, I care, but I'm not an atheist. And in some of these moments, you'd be hard pressed to find very many differences between Jody and me. And that's why I need the 23rd Psalm. I worry. We worry. We worry about our kids and our jobs and our homes and our neighborhoods and our country and war and money and our parents. And some of you are hoping I'll stop right now because you're getting worried as I make that list. And then, as a Christian, you're not supposed to worry, so you try not to worry, but sometimes it's hard. And then you read a study or hear about a study that says worry is bad for your health, which gives you something else to worry about. We get the word worry from the Old High German word würgen, which means to strangle, to choke, which is what it feels like. Sometimes there's a stranglehold on our lives. So what do? 7 years ago, still in Philly, there's the Franklin Institute there, and it's got a lot of neat things, a lot of neat exhibits, but also some exhibits that move through town. And the one they had 7 years ago was a spy exhibit. And anybody else just loves spy novels, spy movies, spy shows. Yeah, I like them. Jen loves them. So of course we went. We took our family. And one of the fascinating aspects of spies to me, and there's again lots of that's been written and lots of TV shows and movies about this, but one of the fascinating aspects is sleeper agents. And it's fascinating to me because they're real. This isn't something that Hollywood made up. This would be, especially during the Cold War, Russians who would learn English at a very young age, perfect English, and then they would be inserted into normal American life, just ready and waiting to carry out a mission. And if anybody watched the TV show The Americans that finished up a couple years ago, it was a TV show, a whole series based on this premise. And it didn't come from Hollywood. This actually happened. So it's possible that maybe in the 1980s, your blonde-haired, blue-eyed neighbor who you thought was from Wisconsin might not really be working in the best interests of your community and your country, even though they were easy to talk to, even though they were the best neighbors on the block, even though it's so comfortable to spend time around them, they are not on your side. And that's what worry is like. We make friends with worry because worry doesn't look evil. We cut ourselves some slack. Worry is not causing us noticeable harm. Worry is an easy reaction for us, but worry is not our friend. Sometimes we come up with clever ways to worry and not admit it. Well, we won't say we're worrying. We'll say, I'm concerned. I'm concerned about something, or I have some issues I'm working through, or I have a lot on my mind. And all that can help us feel better about worry, but it's kind of like renaming your dog. It doesn't really change anything. Romans 14:23 says, everything that does not come from faith is sin. And worry truly is the opposite of faith. So let's call it what it is. It's sin. And when we live by faith, we believe that in the larger picture, God truly does have everything under control. But when we worry, our lives say the exact opposite of that. In essence, worry is the sin of distrusting the promises and power of God. It's a commitment to meditate on the worst case scenarios. But Jesus says in Matthew 6, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is life not more important than food, and the body more important than clothes? Worry, I think, in many ways is a control issue. We settle for worry because it feels like control. Even though it's not, it feels like we're doing something. And the solution to that is trust, relinquishing that control. It's the acknowledgement of the reality that at some point we are helpless and we must trust God. Now we can say that worry is not our friend, but that's really not the answer, because that's stating a negative, and it's hard to do a negative. You can not do a negative, but it's hard to do a negative. So let's think about what positive things can we do. And then the first one's pretty obvious. We need to take responsibility. And we've talked about wisdom before. Proverbs 9:12 says, if you're wise, your wisdom will reward you. We don't just sit on our hands and trust blindly without doing our part. An elder I respected once, he said, I always paraphrase him. He said it much better, but basically it was, if only God can do it, you obviously can't. But if you can do it, God refuses to. God won't do your work, and you can't do God's work. So we need to do what we can do. Of course, Johnson University would say we work like, working is everything depends on work, and we believe like everything depends on belief. But the fact is, God doesn't do the things that I can do, because God doesn't baby me. God doesn't baby people who aren't babies. He wants us to grow up. So of course we take responsibility for the things we can, but the thing is, there's a lot that I can't do. Even we don't have the right to worry if we haven't done our part yet. Even atheists get that. Now here's the part that atheists don't get. This is what sets us apart. Philippians 4:6. Don't be anxious about anything, but in everything be in prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And that's unique to us. This is where we part with the atheists. The peace that comes from a prayerful trust placed in Almighty God, creator of the cosmos. Prayer, which might take longer than we want, which may not be answered in the way that we want, but that's the way prayer works. We do our part, and then we trust that God will do the things that only God can do. Worry, I came across this quote, worry is the result of trying to carry a burden that never belonged on your shoulders. We don't want it, we don't need it, we can't handle it. And the 23rd Psalm, probably the best known Psalm, is a Psalm that we frequently read it. Normally, if you hear it, it's a funeral. But remember, this Psalm was written for the living. And before I share that, I want to share the opposite, the anti-23rd Psalm that I've run across. And I want to read it because many of us, at least in pockets of our lives, we sing the wrong psalm. So here's the anti-23rd Psalm. I am on my own. No one looks out for me. No one protects me. I am always restless. I am easily frustrated and often disappointed. It's a jungle. I feel overwhelmed. It's a desert. I'm thirsty. I stumble down some dark paths. Still, I insist I want to do what I want, when I want, how I want. But life is confusing. Why don't things ever really work out? I'm haunted by the emptiness and futility, by shadows of death. I feel the big hurt and final loss. I spend my life protecting myself. Bad things can happen. I find no lasting comfort. I am alone. I'm alone facing everything that could hurt me. Are my friends really even my friends? Other people use me for their own ends. I can't trust anyone. No one has my back. No one is really for me except me. And I'm so much all about me. Sometimes it's sickening. I belong to no one except myself. My cup is never quite full enough. I'm left empty. Disappointment follows me all the days of my life. Will I just be obliterated into nothingness? Will I be alone forever, free falling into a void? It's a living death, and then I die. The anti-psalm tells the story that so many of us have felt so many times, and it becomes our song when we construct our reality from a lie. And the lie is this, that I am the center of the story. In reality, someone else is the center of the story, and that someone else, of course, is God. So the 23rd Psalm tells us what happens when someone else becomes the center of the story. So this is where we end up finally. I know it's not good homiletical practice to end with the scripture that you're going to. You're supposed to begin with it, but this is what happened today. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Can you feel the difference? How everything changes when we trust God, when he becomes the center. And that doesn't necessarily give us immediate gratification. It's also not full of bitterness and the feeling that we're just grasping at the wind with bare hands. It's actually taking the hand of God and allowing him to take the lead. I feel like I need to do the Paul Harvey here because I told you earlier about my son losing the ability to walk. And in middle school, we have the benefit now of knowing that Miles can walk. I run with him every Tuesday now. We go out running the trails as long as we have light. And he's fine. He's got 2 healthy legs. It'll take him into as much trouble as he wants to get in. But we didn't know that in the fall of 2011. And one afternoon, I picked up Nina from school. Miles had been in the hospital for probably a week and a half at that point. And she hadn't seen her brother for a while, so I wanted to take her. It's a little bit of a drive. It's probably about 45-minute drive to get to the hospital. I wanted her to see him. I wanted him to see her. And we had a lot of tests, MRIs, CAT scans, EKGs, other initials I can't remember. And we were doing everything we could do, and we did not know what would happen. And Nina asked me on the way down, is Miles going to be okay? And sometimes as a parent, you become a better person than you really are. And because I was a mess at that time. But at that time, it's not time to be a mess. It's time to be dad. You dig deep and you become a parent. And what I said to her was something she probably didn't understand at the time, but I hope that as she grows, she will. And I hope that I'll I'll continue to understand it as I grow. But what I said, I don't know. I don't know if Miles is ever going to walk again. But Miles is going to be okay. And under the mess of that moment, there was a foundation of faith that said, I'm doing everything I can. And there's a lot I can't control. And this might not turn out well. But even if it doesn't, in this family, we trust in God. And at least for that moment on I-676, I parted ways with my atheist friends. Because worry is not my friend. Worry is not your friend. Do you need to part ways with an atheist and exchange your worry for trust? That's the lesson of Psalm 23. Sorry, that story has a happy ending. It shouldn't get me choked up like that. They never diagnosed him with an issue at CHOP. They said he maybe had a spinal infarction, which is basically a stroke in your spine. And I said, well, what proof do you have of that? They said, none, but we don't have any other options. Later, I would go to a neurologist, take him to a neurologist for one reason or another. And the neurologist said he had an infection. He had a cold. Sometimes it goes to your nose and sometimes it goes to your spine. He'll be fine and it'll never happen again. We hope that's the case. But he certainly is fine.